All right, welcome back to CKLA Chats. I am Team 3 DLC Foster-Yankey, and in this video, we're going to be chatting about Lesson 6 in the Reformation Unit, and it is a closer look at the rise of the Reformers. So the core text for this lesson is the Reformation Movement, Chapter 4. Students did read this text in a previous lesson, and they're rereading it this time to examine the author's words, phrases, and devices used to describe the church's influence and the practices challenged by reformers. We're going to start with the first component in this lesson, which is reading. And the cub for reading is students will know the ways Johann Gutenberg, Martin Luther, Frederick III, and John Calvin contributed to the Reformation movement. They'll understand each key figure's motives were caused by the events of the time period, and they'll be able to demonstrate comprehension of text reread with partners by summarizing the motives of key Reformation figures and acting out key events. So the reading component for this lesson is divided into 3 subcomponents for a total of 45 minutes. They'll partner read chapter 4 with a partner for 20 minutes. They'll do some acting in partnerships and small groups for 20 minutes, and word work for the word defy, whole group for 5 minutes. So this is the same big question that students encountered in the previous lesson. A student is going to read it again. Just what did Martin Luther, John Calvin, and others contribute to the Reformation movement? And the teacher is going to ensure that students understand what the question means. So as students get ready to partner read for chapter 4, the teacher is going to be explaining to them why they're going to reread this chapter. And that is to review the key events and focus on the motives or reasons why key figures of the Reformation did the things they did. They'll ask students how Johann Gutenberg, Martin Luther, and Frederick III and John Calvin contributed to the Reformation movement, and potentially review vocabulary if necessary before students reread the chapter. The teacher is going to pair students within the groups they have prepared in advance to read and complete activity page 6.1. In the advanced preparation for this lesson, the teacher should have intentionally selected students to be in certain groups. So this isn't something you should see them figuring out in the moment, who's going to be paired with who in which group. The grouping is particularly important here because each group will be answering questions about a specific historical figure as they read. Students assigned Martin Luther will be answering the most questions. So it is suggested that students assigned that historical figure be capable of reading and comprehending text and answering short answer questions without teacher support. So again, you should see some very intentional pairing and assigning on the part of the teacher here. So to continue, the teacher is going to have students turn to activity page 6.1 and record the name of the historical figure they've been assigned on the worksheet where it says name of historical figure. You should see the teacher reviewing the page with students by reading the instructions. Basically, they are completing the activity page from the point of view of their assigned historical figure, and they're going to write in first person point of view the answer to the questions. The teacher should also help students identify which events apply to their assigned historical figure by having students highlight or star the boxes in which they should write. So there's potential for a lot of confusion if explicit directions aren't given. Finally, the teacher explains to students why they are filling out this activity page. Later on, they will use it to act out historic events in this lesson, so they need to complete it accurately. As a check for understanding before they get started, the teacher points out the 2 columns on the activity page, events and argument, then asks students what an argument is. The teacher gives examples and has students raise their hands to indicate an event or an argument. Students being able to tell the difference between the two will come in handy in filling out the activity page. Once time is up for completing the activity page, the teacher provides each group with the answer key or projects the one provided in the digital components and allows them to share notes and check their work. Next, the teacher chooses one student from each group to act as the historical figure. It seems more like an interview to me in that the teacher is asking the student questions and they are reading their answers from the activity page as if they were the historical figure. So it'll be really fun to do like an Oprah type of show or any other type of interview talk show for this activity. Students who are not being interviewed should be following along on their activity page and continuing to add to their explanations as they listen and observe. So they're going to repeat this exercise a few times with different students acting out the parts to allow for a broader assessment. And then they're going to move on to 5 minutes of word work using the word defy. Same routine. The teacher uses the word in context in a sentence from the reader, has students repeat it, gives the definition, a sample sentence. They're going to ask students for examples of times when they defied someone or something. And 2 to 3 students will use the word defy in their response. The teacher will ask for the part of speech and follow up with a describing activity. The prompt is describe Martin Luther's actions using the word defy. Who or what did he defy? Be sure to use the word defy in your response. From there, they're going to move on to the language component of the lesson. It is divided into 3 subcomponents, again, totaling 45 minutes. So we're going to work on grammar, prepositions, and prepositional phrases in partnerships and small groups for 15 minutes. Morphology for the suffix ist, whole group for 15 minutes. And some spelling work, whole group for another 15 minutes. So for the grammar, prepositions, and prepositional phrases lesson, the teacher is going to remind students that they've learned about a part of speech called a preposition in the previous unit. Students are going to think, pair, share about what a preposition does and examples of prepositions. And then a few pairs are going to share out. If necessary, the teacher will clarify what prepositions do and also remind students about prepositional phrases and the different parts of speech contained in those. The teacher is going to refer to the prepositional phrases poster or anchor chart and review the different functions of prepositional phrases listed, and then direct students' attention to a sentence that they prepared in advance. And that is the sentence at the bottom of the screen here. Students are going to help the teacher identify a preposition and its prepositional phrase, then share the function of that prepositional phrase. A volunteer is going to be selected to circle the first preposition, underline the prepositional phrase, and write whether the function is place, time, or partner. Another volunteer should be called to circle another preposition in the sentence, underline the prepositional phrase, and write whether the function is place, time, or partner. From there, students will work in small groups to continue the activity with the sentences on the screen. Afterwards, there's a check for understanding where the teacher clarifies that some prepositions have different functions depending upon the phrase. The teacher is going to provide examples for on and in and have students raise their hands to first indicate place and then to indicate time. Next, students will turn to activity page 6.2. The teacher will read the directions and the first example with students. Those directions are to use the prepositions from the word box here to complete the sentences. Some prepositions will be used more than once. Then they're going to write the function, place, time, or partner in the box below the preposition. For the second part, they're going to answer the following questions using the prepositions provided in the word box. They do not need to use all of the prepositions from the word box. They will underline the prepositions in their sentences and The class will complete the first item together, and students will complete the rest of the activity page independently. Answers are reviewed as a class, or the pages can be collected to be graded at a later time. Next up is morphology. There should be a suffixes anchor chart posted somewhere in the classroom. The teacher is going to refer to it and remind students what a suffix is, then briefly review the suffix ness from a previous unit. The teacher is going to go on to explain to students that today they'll learn about the suffix ist. They'll write it on the suffixes anchor chart and point out the correct pronunciation, then explain what it means and add it to the anchor chart as well. Next, the teacher is going to explain that when ist is added to nouns, it doesn't change the part of speech of the root word, but it does change the meaning. The teacher is going to model adding the suffix ist to the word novel, then share an example of the word novelist in a sentence. Then they will have students provide sentences using the word novelist and repeat that process with the remaining ist words. As a check for understanding, the teacher will explain that sometimes when the suffix ist is removed, the full root word remains, and sometimes only part of the word remains. Using examples from the chart, the teacher will have students make a circle with their hands to indicate a full root word, or a half circle with one hand to indicate a partial word. Students will then turn to activity page 6.3. The teacher will briefly review the directions. In the first section, they're going to write the correct word to complete each sentence. They may need to add an S to make the word fit correctly in the sentence. And then in the second section, they're going to write the correct word from the word box above to answer each riddle. And in the third section, they're going to write their own riddle where the answer is a word with the suffix ist. And that riddle is answer the following question: which seems like a more challenging career, a novelist or an artist, and why? For the challenge at the end of the activity page, it says you have learned about John Calvin and his role in the Reformation. Based on what you know about the suffix ist, what do you think the word Calvinist means? Here's a sentence that may help you. Calvinists traveled to France, the Netherlands, and Scotland to spread their beliefs to new groups. Meaning of Calvinist is what the students will fill in. So the first question is completed as a teacher-guided activity, and students complete the rest of the activity page for homework. And that leads us to spelling. So the teacher will explain that the 12 spelling words are related to prefixes they have studied in morphology. They'll introduce the words by writing them on the board or anchor chart paper. They'll say the word aloud, sound out each syllable, naming each letter aloud as it is written, continuing syllable by syllable until the word is spelled correctly. As a check for understanding, they'll have students raise their hands if there are more affix words than root words, if all the words are the same part of speech, if there are more adjectives than any other part of speech, if there are any adverbs, and the prefixes N and M have similar meaning and effects on the root words. After writing and pronouncing the word, the teacher will use the chart in the teacher's guide to define each word and provide an example of how to use it in a sentence. Students check their understanding again as needed after reviewing the charts. Then students will turn to activity pages 6.4 and 6.5. The teacher will explain that they will take home activity page 6.4 to practice spelling the words and complete 6.5 for homework. On activity page 6.5, they're going to write each spelling word under its definition, then identify the word's part of speech. There is a note at the end of the lesson regarding a mid-unit content assessment administered between lessons 6 and 7 to assess students' comprehension of the domain content presented in the reader thus far. It takes 30 to 45 minutes, so if you can fit it in without throwing off your pacing too much, it's good data to have. And that concludes the video about this lesson. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.